Hey, I hated picking coffee. I really do. Yes, I said it. I hate picking coffee. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Source of Food and you're in Memory Lane. This is the channel where we talk about childhood memories. At least I talk about my childhood memories, all right? So if you're happening on the channel for the first time, welcome. Today I want to talk about a chore that we had to do as kids. It was not the kind of chore that we had to do like every day per se. This was more or less a seasonal kind of chore, right? But looking back into the 60s, when I was just a kid growing up, there were a couple of things that we had to do, right? We had animals around the house, domestic animals that needed to be fed, and so the chickens need to be fed, right? The goats, we had to take them out to pasture, right? For those people who had cows, they had to take them out to pasture in the morning and bring them back in, right? So, but I never had cows at home, so more or less what I had to do was to take out the goats, maybe feed the pig, feed the chicken if there was anything there, if there was anything to feed the chickens, I would do some of that. But generally speaking, those were really the some of the more common chores we had to do. But in addition to that, you had to carry some water because for those people like me who never had a tank at home, from time to time I had to go fetch water, whether it be for cooking, whether it be for laundry, whether it be to have a bath, that kind of stuff. So we never had a tank at home, so I had to go fetch water. So there was another chore, carrying water from the tank from wherever for domestic purposes. So there were other things we had to do that were not necessarily everyday, an everyday chore, but for example, some chores were more seasonal, put it that way. And one of those chores was picking coffee. Now, Jamaica, at least when I was growing up back in the 60s and the 70s, Jamaica produced a lot of coffee, right? One of the best coffee brand, the best known coffee brand in the world is produced in Jamaica, Blue Mountain Coffee, right? If you're a coffee connoisseur, I'm sure you might have had Blue Mountain Coffee, top-notch coffee. So Jamaica is a coffee producing country. I don't think we produce coffee, the quantity of coffee like we did back in the 60s, 70s, and maybe in the 80s, but I think we still produce some coffee. So in my village where I grew up in Jamaica, that village was a coffee producing mecca. It was a small community, but the amount of coffee that was produced in that little community, man, it was amazing. I was always astonished to see sometimes up to 2 truck loads, I'm talking big trucks, of coffee leaving the community, right? But what I'm trying to drive at today, the topic that I want to discuss is the issue of reaping coffee. Man, that was something I never like it. And part of the reason why I never liked doing it is it is such a tedious process. For example, your parents might give you a bucket or they might give you an old bar pan, or they might give you a basket, the regular bamboo basket that which was the more common container that people would use for reaping coffee. Or maybe it was an old chimney or something, whatever people could find. Old pun pan. You'll hear me talk about the pun pan on this channel. Whatever container that could be found. And you go into this coffee piece. We call it the coffee piece. It's really the coffee plantation, right? But we call it the coffee piece. And your parents would give you your container when the coffees are ready on the tree, right? The berries are red, they're ripe, they're ready to be picked. Because if you don't get if you don't get those coffee beans from the tree, when they are fully ripe, then the rats will have a heyday. I can tell you that. We used to have a thing that we call rat cut, and this is when rats would go through the coffee plantation, or the coffee piece as we call it. They would go through the trees and they would just eat, and whatever they don't want to eat, they would just you'd see coffee beans litter the ground all over. And at a certain point as kids, we had to go pick those up. Nothing went to waste. But anyway, that's not the point today. Today is all about reaping the coffee, picking the coffee beans from the tree. Man, as a kid, that was something I detested. You're given that big basket sometime, or whatever container, right? And you're picking the coffee, you're picking beans, and you're picking and you're throwing the berries into your container, whatever the container is. You're picking and you're reaping for 1 hour, and sometimes you look in your basket. The bottom of the basket is barely covered. And you're doing your best, right? You look in your basket or whatever container you have, especially if it's a big container, and the bottom is barely covered. Now, what can be more discouraging than that? You're in the coffee piece or the coffee plantation, and you're reaping, and it's as if you're not getting anywhere. And then, but apart from that though, reaping coffee has its hazards. For example, some of the trees, they had ants, right? So you have black ants sometimes, different sizes of black ants. You would have what's this other ant? Anyway, you have the black ants, and you'd have a little red, a little tiny one. It's red. It's red. Parts of Jamaica, they call it the pepper ants. In Manchester, where I grew up, we call it pitimilickle. Essentially, I think people coined the phrase pitimilickle to say, you're lucky that I'm so little. But like I said, reaping coffee had those hazards, right? You're holding the branch, you're picking the berries off the branches, and there are times when these, within these branches you have these different kind of ants, and I can tell you sometimes these ants, they fall in your eyes, and especially that little one I talk about called the pitimilickle or the pepper ants, as we it is commonly known in Jamaica. When that ants fall in your eye, man, oh my goodness, I don't know, man. It has the name pepper ants for a reason, but it start to burn you. And the quick thing for you to do is to rub your eye to kind of soothe the burning. But it seems as if the more you rub your eye, it's the more your eyes start burning, right? So those were some of the hazards, that we had to endure as kids, picking coffee. But one aspect of reaping coffee that I did not like was when we had to reap coffee during the rainy season, man. Oh my goodness. So think about this. It's rainy season, or it might not even have been a rainy season. Maybe it was just raining, the previous day, or raining in the morning, but the coffee berries are ready. They're on the trees, and they have to be reaped, right? And rain or shine, you have to get into that coffee piece, right, to get those berries off the trees. Because the last thing you want to have happening is rats eating the berries or the berries falling off on the ground. Okay, so in the wet weather, when the trees are covered with water, the leaves, the branches are still wet, you as a kid, you still have to get in there and do your thing. Pick the berries, and sometimes your shirt is wet all over, and but you just had to endure it. And I can tell you, man, that was one aspect of reaping coffee that I never liked. So we here in North America, I use the word we loosely because I'm not a coffee drinker, but I'm saying we here in North America, we worship our coffee here. We worship coffee. The funny thing, even though my home sold so much coffee, we were never a coffee drinking family. Never a coffee drinking family. I can recall my grandmother, who I grew up with. She would take some, and she would put it in the mortar, the mortar and pestle, and beat it and get the beans out, and she would dry them, and then she would roast them or parch them, as we would say in Jamaica, and yeah, and she would grind it up. She would have a nice bottle of coffee somewhere in the house there. If someone comes by, they could have a cup of coffee if they so desire. But I can recall she was not a coffee drinker, and no one in the family that I can recall back then drank coffee. So that was kind of weird. But back to the point I was trying to make. We here in North America, we worship coffee. It's amazing to see people walk around for their entire day, hours, with a cup of coffee in their hand. It's like a rite of passage. People just walk around with. You should see the coffee shops. Especially, I don't want to call that, the name of the chain, but there's a chain here in Toronto with the letters, TH. I'm just going to say TH. You should see the lineup in the mornings. People who are going to work or whatever, trying to get that cup of coffee before they go. Oh my goodness. But, sometimes I wonder if people, North Americans in general, really appreciate the kind of conditions that coffee is produced in, especially in Central America, where most of the coffee comes from, into Canada here. Many of these farmers endure similar or worse hazards to get this coffee to market. For example, I hear that, especially in Costa Rica, which produces a lot of coffee, sometimes there are snakes in the trees. They get really hurt by all these hazards that they have to deal with. But, I don't think I don't think North Americans really appreciate the you know the conditions and all of that, all of those things that they have, these farmers have to endure, so that we up here can go to the drive-through to get that cup of coffee. Well, anyway, I digress a bit. The point I wanted to make today was the fact that, man, we had a lot of chores to do, but I never liked reaping coffee. Never like it. So what about you? Are you from a coffee producing country? Do you drink coffee? What were some of the chores that you had to do as a child, as a kid? Like I said, I was born in the 60s. What were some of the things that you had to do around the house? Maybe on a daily basis, maybe on a seasonal basis. For me, reaping coffee was more or less a seasonal thing, right? So what were some of the chores that you had to do? Did you had to go, take the cows and the goats and out to pasture in the mornings? Did you have to feed the pig? Did you have to feed the chickens if you had chickens? Tell me about it. Leave some comments in the comment section below, right? And if you like this content, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, right? And don't forget to subscribe. Hit that notification bell, because I have a lot to talk about. All right? So until we talk again, man, this is Memory Lane. Take care of yourself and be safe. All right? Bye.